The police smashed the door down and found him counting his success ledger. 1,000 lives were destroyed before the ultimate karma trap finally snapped shut. He thought he was a king, but an RTI request became his executioner. This wasn't just some small-time neighborhood grift. It was a Sector 63 empire built on the desperate dreams of young graduates. To understand this absolute madness, you have to understand the level of obsession people— Bro, I'm not even joking. A government job in India isn't just a career path. It's basically like winning the lottery and becoming an instant local celebrity at the same time. People call it Izzat, which is basically social status on absolute steroids, where your entire family's reputation— We're talking about young guys from rural areas in Bihar, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh spending every single rupee of their family's life savings just for a shot at a steady desk job in the Indian Railways or the Ministry of Finance. This massive cultural premium makes the youth totally vulnerable to dalals, those unauthorized middlemen who promise sketchy shortcuts to the government payroll. And that is exactly where our Audacity King Saurabh Singh decided to set up his throne. He didn't just want a piece of the pie, he wanted to steal the whole damn bakery while— Imagine being a fresh snatak, the local word for a graduate, working your tail off and thinking you finally scored that dream position. I swear you would be over the moon. Then you find out your official appointment letter with the fancy gold seal is as fake as a $3 bill. The level of disrespect and pure greed in this case was completely off the charts. But here is when it gets good, because Saurabh forgot one tiny thing. You can't outrun Prarabdha Karma forever. Get ready, because what happens when these victims decide to use the law to stage a legal counterattack is pure— So, picture this. Sector 63 in Noida. If you haven't been there, imagine an endless maze of clinical-looking glass buildings where everyone looks like they're doing something incredibly important with a spreadsheet. It is the absolute perfect place to hide a massive criminal operation because this is where our main guy, Saurabh Singh, let's call him the Spreadsheet Sultan because of his obsession with data and his massive ego, decided to build his cubicle kingdom. And man, he didn't just set up a desk and a phone, he built a literal empire of deception. He had this whole floor filled with 15 telecallers who were led by Sushil Kumar, or as I like to call him, the Deception Director. These weren't just random people off the street. Sushil trained them to sound exactly like those stern, overworked government officials we all know and, well, mostly fear. The Spreadsheet Sultan was playing high-stakes chess while everyone else was playing Ludo. His crew didn't just cold call people and hope for the best, they were harvesting data like digital vultures from legitimate job portals like Naukri.com and Monster. They knew exactly who had just finished their snatak, their graduation, and who was sweating. They targeted the Sarkari Naukri obsession because they knew that in our culture, a government job is the ultimate golden ticket. It's not just about the salary, it's about that Izzat, that social prestige that makes your neighbors look at you with respect and your relatives finally stop asking when you're going to settle down. But get this, the level of detail was insane. I swear I'm not making this up. They didn't just send sketchy misspelled emails. They had high-quality, forged government seals and letterheads from the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. They were using fake National Career Service portals and virtual private servers to hide their digital footprints. When a victim opened a PDF from them, they saw the official Ashoka Chakra lions, the specific stamps, and that perfect, dry, bureaucratic language that screams authority. It looked so legitimate that you'd need a magnifying. They weren't just running a scam. They were running a high-definition parody of the entire Indian government recruitment system. And while the rest of the world was slowing down, their fake office was absolutely buzzing with the sound of lives being systematically dismantled for registration fees. The whole world is basically under house arrest, Everyone's in their pajamas panicking about toilet paper, and the global economy is doing a literal backflip into a dumpster fire. For most people, it was an absolute nightmare. But for our guy Saurabh Singh, who I'm calling the Scam King, it was like Christmas, the Super Bowl. And this is when the Noida Sector 63 operation went from a shady side hustle to a full-blown criminal empire. See, while everyone else was learning how to bake sourdough or making TikToks, Saurabh and his army of what I call the cubicle cobras were looking at the data. They knew that out in rural areas like Bihar, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh, there were thousands of young snataks. That's the local word for graduates, bro. These kids had studied their hearts out for years, and suddenly the world was shutting down. In Indian culture, a Sarkari Naukri, a government job, isn't just a regular paycheck. It's the ultimate golden ticket. It's financial stability, it's social status, it's basically the only way. It's what we call Izzat, and the Scam King knew exactly how to weaponize that hope. He started harvesting data from legitimate job portals like Naukri.com and Monster, like he was picking digital low-hanging fruit. His team of 15 telecallers began a massive phishing campaign that targeted the most vulnerable people at the worst possible time. But the most shocking, they would call up these graduates and say, "Hey, the Ministry of Finance is doing a special emergency recruitment drive because of the pandemic. You're sitting in a remote village, worried you'll never find work. Of course you're going to believe it." They weren't just scamming, they were predatory. They hit that legendary 1,000 victims milestone right when they had this progressive fee system that was basically a masterclass in psychological manipulation. First, it was a tiny 1,500 rupee registration fee. No big deal, right? Then came the 5,000 rupee document verification charge. Finally, they'd hit them with the big one, the 25,000 rupee laptop and equipment deposit. To a guy in a village, that's an insane amount of money. That's probably their family's entire life savings or a high-interest loan from a local moneylender. But because Saurabh provided these high-quality fake government seals and letterheads from the Ministry of Skill Development, he was sitting in his air-conditioned office in Sector 63, watching the millions roll in while the rest of the country was struggling to survive. He thought the lockdown was his perfect shield, thinking the police were too busy with masks and curfews to notice a few fake call centers. But he forgot one very important thing. When you take everything from someone who has nothing left to lose, you're not just making a profit. You're making an enemy who has nothing but time to hunt you down. Saurabh was at the top of his game, but the karma clock was already ticking. So enter our hero. Let's call him the Engineering GOAT, because this man single-handedly decided to choose violence against the system. Our guy had just dropped 50,000 rupees, which is basically a king's ransom for a fresh graduate, as a training fee for his dream government gig. Saurabh, aka the Scam King, had sent him this super official-looking appointment letter. And I mean, this thing looked legit. We're talking high-quality fake seals, the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship letterhead, the whole 9 yards. But here is the thing about engineers, bro. They are trained to spot a glitch in the matrix. He's looking at this letter and something just feels off. Maybe the font was slightly wonky, or maybe he realized the ministry doesn't usually send appointment letters via a random WhatsApp PDF at 2 a.m. Regardless, instead of just crying into his chai, he decided to play the ultimate Uno reverse card. He filed an RTI, a Right to Information request. For my non-Indian friends, an RTI is basically the legal equivalent of saying, "I want to speak to the manager of the entire government, and you legally have to answer me in 30 days. It is the most powerful tool a regular citizen has, and our guy wielded it like a freaking lightsaber. But the most shocking, while he was waiting for the government to mail him back, he didn't just sit on his hands. Oh no, he went full Sherlock Holmes. He started digging into the digital footprint of the recruitment portal. and realized the whole thing was hosted on a sketchy server that probably had more viruses than a petri dish. When the official RTI reply finally landed on his doorstep, it was like a slap to the face. The government basically said, "We have no idea who you are, we aren't hiring, and this letter you sent us is a total fabrication." Most people would have just gone to their local precinct and hoped for the best, but the engineering GOAT was built different. He knew that if he just went to the cops alone, Saurabh would just delete So he started a digital manhunt. He tracked down other victims on forums and Reddit, They started building a spreadsheet of doom, documenting every single transaction and every lie the telecallers told them. He was no longer just a victim. He was the architect of a legal trap that He was ready to turn the scam king's cubicle kingdom into a prison cell, and he had the receipts to prove it. BRO, when I tell you he was prepared, I mean he had the GPS coordinates of the fake call center before the police even knew it existed. The hunter was officially being hunted. So this is where the movie-level justice finally kicks in, and trust me, it is the most satisfying thing you will hear all week. Imagine the UPSTF, the elite special task force of the Uttar Pradesh police, deciding they've had enough of the Audacity King's nonsense. These officers are basically the Indian version of the Avengers, and they don't just knock on your door, they dismantle your entire existence. To catch the scam king Saurabh Singh, they didn't just rush in with sirens blaring because that would have given him time to hit the Instead, they went full undercover. We are talking about high-ranking officers posing as desperate, wide-eyed SNATAC graduates from rural villages, literally walking into that Sector 63 office with fake resumes and hungry looks, acting like they're ready to pay whatever registration fee the Audacity King wanted. They're sitting there in those cramped cubicles listening to the telecallers run the script while smooth-talking Shushil, Saurabh's right-hand man, is probably in the corner counting cash thinking he's the smartest guy in Noida. But here is where the universe decides to play its favorite card, the irony card. Saurabh Singh was so confident, so absolutely blinded by his own ego, that he didn't even realize the vulnerable victims sitting in front of him were actually trained command. When the signal finally dropped, it wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a total shutdown. The doors were bolted, the VPS servers were Bro, I would pay actual money to see that freeze frame. He went from supreme CEO of scams to deer in the headlights in approximately 0.5 seconds. But the real kicker, the thing that makes this story legendary in the Reddit r/pro revenge halls of fame, was the success ledger. See, Saurabh was a meticulous freak. He kept a physical book, a literal diary of every person he'd ever robbed. He called it his success record, but the police called it State's Exhibit A. In Indian philosophy, there's this concept called prarabdha karma, the idea that your past actions are ripening right now, and you cannot outrun the harvest. Well, Saurabh's harvest was a one-way ticket to a cell. When the STF opened that ledger, they found the names, the Aadhaar numbers, and the exact amount stolen. The man literally wrote his own confession in cursive. They recovered dozens of mobile phones, 5 laptops, and those high-quality fake government seals he used to ruin people's lives. It wasn't just a raid, it was a total exorcism of a criminal enterprise. Seeing him led out in handcuffs that is the definition of chef's kiss justice. So what do you think? Did they go too? Drop your verdict in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, smash